Modern science has discovered so much about the complexity of life. And all these discoveries have only led to more amazement and more questions. It has not led to polishing up the evolution model. Actually, it has put the evolution model in a serious crisis. We now know that just the planet we live on is a very special place in the universe. We no longer have a consensus scientific opinion that our planet is just one of many planets and that there will be millions of civilizations out there, which people thought like 20, 30, 40 years ago. We now have even evolutionary scientists write books about the fact that the Earth is so unique that they don't expect to find any life forms anymore anywhere in the universe, or if we find them, it's very unlikely. Why? Because there's so many unique conditions that have to be fulfilled for life to exist on a place like Earth. And if you look into microbiology, it gets even more exciting. There is no serious scientist anymore who believes that life started by chance. This might sound like strange, but it is really true. There is no scientist anymore who believes that. Basically, origin of life scientists are in a great, great crisis because they know already for the last 20 years or so now that it cannot have started by chance. It's way too complex. It's just not possible that it ever started by chance. So there must be another explanation. And they've been searching everywhere they can to find an alternative explanation. They can't find one. It's basically a dead end. And they admit it. Recently there was a show called Origins on Nova. You might have seen it it's like 4 or 5 months ago. And what they talked about is the conditions on early Earth, and then they make a big jump and start talking about evolution from simple life forms to complex life forms. They didn't really explain how life started, but they had the background story on their website, which I read. And the scientist there, who did the whole program, was interviewed by Nova. And one of the questions they asked him is, do you believe or do you understand how life started? And his answer on the website was like, I have no clue. I really don't know. I have no explanation. But then the interviewer asked him, okay, if you don't have an explanation, when do you think we will have an answer? When do you think we will know? And then the scientist said, I don't think we will have an answer in my lifetime. I'm not even sure whether we will understand in the lifetime of my grandchildren. So this is an evolutionary scientist basically saying, I have no clue. And if you read quotes from guys like, you might have heard of him, Stephen Hawking. He's that really famous evolutionary scientist. He's like considered the Einstein of our days. He actually recently made a quote which says, it would be very difficult to explain why the universe should have begun in just this way, except as an act of God who intended to create beings like us. I think he's very close to becoming a believer. As you know, he's also very sick, so he's really challenged, I think, right now to see where he really stands. And I wouldn't be surprised that in his lifetime we'll see him turn around. Another example is of a guy called Anthony Flew. You might have heard of him. He just was, there's an article about him on the websites and on different newspapers. He is a very famous British outspoken evolutionist. He's about 81 years old now, and he's basically been preaching evolution for his lifetime, over the last 50 years. And he just made a public confession that he no longer believes in evolution, he now believes in God. Because he just can't reconcile the evidence with everything else. Another illustration is a guy called Dean Kenyon. He's a microbiologist who has spent his whole life working on origins, trying to explain how life started. He actually was the one who put together the most predominant theory about explaining life without falling into the chance discussion, because he understood it cannot have started by chance. So he worked on a model which talked about affinities, natural affinities for certain chemical reactions to happen and line up that way. He basically concluded fairly recently that doesn't work, and now he's confessed to God. Modern science has done more good for our case, for Christian case, than ever before. In my youth, it was the enemy. In my youth, basically, evolution did more bad things to Christianity than any persecution ever. More people fell away from the faith for that. But over the last 10, 20 years, that has totally turned around. And if you take the time to look at all the evidence there is, it's an amazing conclusion that, and there's a very long list of material, people who went to my class have seen it's a lot of stuff that points all to the same conclusion. If you weigh the evidence for God against God, for evolution against evolution, or for evolution for creation, then and you try to balance it, it's not like, okay, you have to balance this a little bit and try to make a decision because you have pros and cons. It's a totally off-scale experiment. It's like all the evidence is for creation, nothing points to evolution. And it's totally this way. So it's like almost like a no-brainer that you come to the conclusion that God must have created us. Now there is an argument going on about how he did it, which I think is relatively unimportant. I mean, some people believe in the 6-day creation, other people believe in an older earth creation, but frankly that's not that relevant. The conclusion is God was involved. It could have never happened without a creator God. So I reached that answer fairly soon, frankly, that God exists. I mean, that's definitely the case. Now then the question becomes, is the God that exists really the God we worship in our Christian faith?